Alrighty, so we are going to do a mock interview for Alicia as she gets ready for a senior document specialist position. But we're going to do some kind of general TMF questions, some behavioral, and then try to do some harder potential, like very senior, even like junior manager positions, just so that Alicia is totally ready for everything. So why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself, Alicia?
Of course. My name is Alicia Vale. I'm located remotely in Utah, typically near Salt Lake City. I have 3 kids that are under the ages of 6. I'm married to my husband, and we have met in the hospital, so that was really fun to get some hospital experience. And since then I have worked as a phlebotomist doing some documents for patients, and then I moved into medical assisting for a little bit, and then after that I found this opportunity through Ultragenics as a contractor. So I've been a clinical document specialist with Ultragenics since 2020, May of 2020 specifically. And then in September of last year, I started up as a full-time FTE with Ultragenics as the same role, clinical document specialist. So that's a little bit about me. I love to do things outdoors. I live in Utah, so it's a beautiful backyard and there's plenty to do outside. So yeah, that's me.
Perfect. Yep. And it's always good to kind of like, that's me, or kind of to wrap up the question, especially the open-ended one. So that's perfect job. What do you look for when you're looking for a completeness review and you're looking at the monitor report? So what can you gain from the monitor report, and what other documents would you look for to accompany the monitor report?
So the monitor report, I would look for, obviously we have standards that we look for when we look at documents. So we have GCP requirements, meaning that we look, or in Alcoa standards. So we look to make sure that the document is complete. You have specific, it's a form. So, you make sure that it's basically filled out to the best of its ability. If there's any signatures, specifically, electronic signatures, you also look to make sure that it has the, Part 11 compliance, make sure that you have an audit trail certificate with that, the reasoning, the date and timestamp of the document, and also make sure that you have the printed name alongside of the cursive email signature. So there's that you look for. You also look for other requirements that go along with the monitor report, such as the site staff CVs. You look for licenses, make sure those aren't expired as well, 1572, financial disclosure forms. You look for those essential documents that really tell the story of the site and make sure that everybody that plays a part in that site is also under compliance, meaning that they have the most up-to-date support, that they are basically enabled to work on that site. So.
Awesome. You read my mind with, I was going to tell you earlier, try to emphasize your regulations knowledge, right? And that's one advantage you have, right? Really brush up on that. That's something that Mario loves. And try, and I was like, if you can somewhere slip in, CRF part 11, and making sure things are electronic signature compliant. I was also, in my question though, I was looking for the monitoring letter, the confirmation letter and the follow-up letter. So I would, again, I don't know if they're going to ask you this, but that's something that they could ask you, if that's what they're referring to, what documents accompany a monitoring report. Another thing you could add is you can say, when I review the monitoring report, I'm looking for completeness, and just go talk to what you talked about, that you answered that question perfectly. You can then say, I also like to look through to see if the CRA, which you want to highlight that you know what the document is, whether or not the CRA listed any findings on there, and that can alert me to issues, such as documents needing to be collected, or some sort of safety issue, or some sort of non-compliance. in regards to the site. And you can add like, wow, that might be more of a clinical operations responsibility. It helps me alert to what documents I need to be looking for, but also it's something that I can even raise to the clinical operations team, in the sense of, because not everyone is really reading the reports carefully as they should be. And it's a really big issue in terms of like sponsor oversight, to make sure that they're aware of what's going on in the site. So you can word that however you want to word it, but I'm just saying that like I like to skim the document. You don't also want to say I spend like half an hour reading it each one, but I like to skim the document to see if there are any issues that the CRA has pointed out, because it helps me have a better understanding of the site. So yeah, but overall, I think you did a great job. I love that you pulled in the regulations and like the completeness and the signature part. So really good. Any other comments from anyone else? Okay, next question I have is, what is the DOA log and what are you going to kind of use it for?
All right, so the DOA stands for Delegation of Authority, and it basically is a log that kind of shows, you know, who is on the site, who the staff are, what their roles are. So if you go and visit as a site monitor and want to know who you are working with and what their roles and responsibilities are, you can refer to the DOA log. It's a living document, meaning that it changes throughout the lifetime of the study. And if there is somebody who leaves the study, it would also have, because it has the start and end date for everybody listed, it would also be able to tell you when their official end date is of the study. We use this DOA log a lot in our completeness reviews, because when we look at a 1572, we do have to see, you know, when people started and when people ended, in order for us to look for their documentation. So if we refer to the DOA log and we see that somebody started March 1st of 2022, and we are in, you know, April or May, then we would still expect to see all of their current standings as far as their credentials. And if they have an end date, then we know that we would not be expecting their credentials to go past that specific date in the DOA log. And then at the very end of the study, we also collect the finalized versions of these DOA logs. So like I said, it's the living document. It's being updated and changed periodically throughout the lifetime of the study. So it is something that is very essential to our team in knowing what to expect from site staff.
Perfect. Yeah. I want to make sure you hit on training, and then that it's a living document and that doesn't really need to be signed until the end. So that was, in my opinion, a perfect response. Sometimes you can make things, you don't want to go too long, but I think you did a good with just kind of showing that you do want to have people have current trainings and things like that. So good. My next question for you is, what do you know about IRBs and how do they kind of play a role into different documents that you would expect? And what would you expect them to approve?
Okay, so the IRB board is basically a board that oversees a study. So when you have participants in the study, you basically have to have somebody advocate for them, meaning the IRB is overseeing the safety of the participants. So when a study is started up, they oftentimes send specific documents to the IRB, such as, for example, the ISF or the informed consent forms. They have to have them approved by the IRB. And the IRB basically reviews it, makes sure that the patient's safety is still going to be taken into account. There's nothing that's unethical that's going to happen during the study. And then also sometimes if you have a protocol that you want things to go a certain way in the study, but then, you know, you have, say, for example, you want your patients to come every 2 weeks to get a checkup. And, you know, do some monitoring of the patients. If they happen to be out of town or they can't make that 2-week window, then they have to, the study team notifies the IRB and they basically receive what's called the deviation report, meaning that it's the study team acknowledging the fact that a patient cannot be compliant within the lines of the protocol, and the IRB oversees that. Is that what did I answer your question?
Yep, that was really good. You talked about what it is. The one thing to maybe clarify is an IRB is usually per the site, and then sometimes they have central IRBs which oversee for the whole study. But that's only if they're like, sometimes they will try to say, okay, we're going to use a central IRB. I think like Advera is one of them. And then they're going to look for sites that are fine with it, right? Like, let's say John Hopkins might be like, no, we have the John Hopkins IRB, and so the study might be, you know, it's a lot easier just to use a central. We're going to exclude John Hopkins, right? So that's just what you know, is usually it's site specific.
The difference between local and central IRBs.
Yeah, local and central. So yeah, no, that's a great, but overall, a great answer on that. And then in general, I like how you talked about the ICF. That's super important, talking about patient safety. The IRBs approve anything that is patient facing. So if you have any flyers, and that can be a specific question, like what do IRBs approve? And the answer is anything patient facing. And they also approve like protocol, and I think that the IB.
An IB, yeah.
But they mainly, for sure, they're focused, and they usually approve the study, right? They like, if the IRB is not cool with you running the study, I think he's had that issue with items before, as he's seen, where like the IRB is like, no, like this is not the best for the patients, or you know, you're excluding because you're requiring they have insurance, things like that. So like the IRBs can say, no, we don't feel like this study is good for patient rights. We don't want you to do the study here, right? But mainly the only thing that I want to emphasize is that it's site related, except you can have central. Awesome, good job. No, that was great. I definitely feel like you're on top of your stuff, which is good. Maybe you've been watching Power of Work videos. And then next question, this should be an easy one, but I think this is just a basic, and this will also help Ken. Describe 1572 and what components you look for in it.
Yeah, so a 1572 is basically it's site level, meaning that every site in the US should have a 1572. It gives you the overview of basically the site is complying with the FDA regulations. So it will have the PI, principal investigator information on there. It will also have the IRB on there, as well as the labs. So if there's local or central labs, those are all going to be listed. And you also will have, just by signing it, the PI basically agrees that they are compliant with the study, with the FDA regulations, and the fact that they are all up to date with their regulations and their qualifications. And if there is a change in a PI, then you reissue a new 1572. So some sites, depending on staff turnover, they may have more than one 1572.
Awesome. You also update the 1572 if anything on the 1572 changes. You add a new lab, you change the address. Address change is like a common one. I'm not too sure why, but at least in previous things, like sites would change their location or something. So yeah, the 1570, and there was one other thing.
There's a list of the sub-Is on there as well.
Yeah. List of sub-Is. Oh, I want to say, so when they sign, I like that you mentioned that they sign it. The main thing they're signing to is like, not only are they going to like comply, but basically they take responsibility. They can delegate things, but the responsibility of what happens at the site is on them. And that's what they are agreeing to. So it might even be good to take a quick look at like what the actual wording is for what they're signing. That could be a good, useful thing just to know in general. Any other thoughts? Okay, cool. I have, I think, one or two other TMF questions, and then I want to get into some behavioral, because I know we're going to run out of time. So quick, easy question. What does Alcoa stand for?
It stands for attributable. So you have to basically have your documents attribute to the correct owner of the documents. It stands for legibility. So it has to be legible, meaning you can read it. It also stands for contemporaneous, meaning that you have it within a time frame. So you don't wait too long in order to upload something. So the more accurate you are, means that the quicker you are to upload the document and don't have it just sitting at your desk. Then the O stands for original. So you have to have the original documents. And then the A stands for accurate.
Okay, awesome. Good job. And then
I
I'm
have-
gonna, oh, go
I
ahead.
have one thing to nitpick on that.
Yeah, you can. I was kind of.
No, all good. You got them all right. So contemporaneous isn't about uploading. It's about when the document is being created and is like actually being like filled out, that you're not waiting too long to fill out that document, not necessarily uploading it to the TMF. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, when you said that, I was like, is that like the, I know it's timeliness, and you could just stop there, you know, but I was like, I don't.
Yeah, it's
think
timeliness and
uploading.
like the creation of it, not necessarily the uploading of it. Yeah.
And the attributable, I'm not 100% sure if it's to the owner or if it's like to the correct, like the correct document, but we can Google that too. What it's attributing to. But I'm sure your answer is good in general. And then I do want to jump into some behavioral stuff because I think it's really important. And especially if you have an interview with HR, they usually pull from more of that. And I have a couple more trickier ones for you. But the first one is describe a time where it was difficult to communicate with a colleague about a project and how you approach the situation.
So I had a project recently with a coworker, and I reached out to ask them because I felt like it was urgent enough through our system Zoom. So I communicated to them through the Zoom and said, do you have a moment to chat with me? They said they didn't have a moment right then, but that I could, try to schedule an appointment through a meeting. So I did schedule the appointment looking at both of our calendars, and they accepted the meeting, but they didn't end up showing up. And so it was really frustrating for me. But something that I have learned is that, you always got to give the benefit of the doubt to somebody. And I know that in my personal time, I was very overloaded, and I imagined that they were too. So I then, called them directly again, face to face in a Zoom. And I said, hey, I really need to use this time to see if you're available because it's an urgent matter. I really need to get a hold of you. And they apologized for not showing up to the meeting. And so I feel like communication is always key when it comes to, getting across your concern. So if you aren't heard the first time on something that has a deadline, then use other forms of communication. If that person is just clearly not responding to you at all, then at that point, you may need to escalate to your manager and address it and just give the manager a heads up and say, this is all the things that I've done to try to get a hold of them. Yeah, unfortunately, I wasn't able to. And then they can give you suggestions on how to go about that. So.
In general, make sure also not to have any situations that describe the people that could be interviewing you. So just make sure that if you are meeting with HR, totally fine to use that example. But if that person is in the interview panel, don't be like, oh, that was me, so that's just something to think about, because I do know a lot of your examples are going to come from Ultragenics, so you want to think about that, because kind of a follow-up question to that is like describe a conflict that you've had. So do a different conflict and like kind of and then like how you work through it.
So I was on a previous project to basically work on a complaints review with a bunch of different people. And I felt that our team in general, there was a group of 3 of us, I felt like 2 of us worked really well with communication. We both wanted to collaborate together, but we also wanted to include the 3rd person because they were also assigned the same thing. The instructions weren't as clear as maybe what we had hoped, but the one person that I got along with, we were able to say, okay, we will collaborate and we will work together, and we're going to invite this person. So the person ended up coming and to the meeting that we had, and they had a different view as to how to go about the assignment. So basically it felt like there was two of us and then the one person. So we each took time to really hear each other's side. And I think that's also really important, is because the instructions weren't as clear as they could have been, we really tried to take a step back and not take anything personal and say, okay, this is what I feel was assigned to us from the instructions. How do you feel that these were given out to you specifically? And so we got down to the bottom of it and we realized that, it may have been one of two ways. So we all together decided to invite the person who initially gave us the instructions for clarification, get more information. And then after that, we realized that we were both sort of right in the end. And so I feel like, when you have somebody who you may clash with, try not to get so personal with your feelings and take a step back and really kind of use the I statements. I feel like this is happening. This is how I feel. And then ask them in return to give you their feelings. And then you will realize that maybe it was just a misinterpretation of communication, and therefore you can move past it and really try to focus in on how to best go about things with communication going forward.
Good. And overall, I like that you give the situation and then you definitely give a summary about what you learned through it. That's very key, like just to kind of wrap up how you approached it and kind of your summary from it, so that's good. Thank you. The next question I have, which I think might be a trickier question. I haven't personally had this question before, but I think it would be a good one to prepare for in general. The question is, how could you improve?
Man, I think about this question every day. I feel like with my current workload right now, I have a lot of different things going on. I have responsibilities of my own personal, document processing, which is our number one priority. I also am able to work with other study teams as a liaison. So there's those responsibilities. And then there's also responsibilities sometimes where team members may ask me for help. And so there's a lot of things going on all at once. And I feel like I'm always looking for ways to improve my organization and improve my prioritizing. Because every day I may wake up and I say, I want to prioritize this, but then something else more pressing ends up getting in the way. And so I feel like I'm still looking for tools on how to better create maybe a to-do list in a different spreadsheet, and ways that I can really use it more and just really understand that, some things will take precedence over other things at the beginning of the day. And so I am still continually growing and learning and trying to learn from my other team members how they also juggle the act of so many different responsibilities. So I'm continually trying to improve my prioritizing of specific deadlines.
Really good, a really good one. And that in general, I feel as though one goal of an interview should be to kind of answer as many questions as you can with one answer, right? It helps because you want to communicate as much as you can. And that usually is a question: how do you prioritize things, or how do you change priorities quickly? And do you want to highlight that you communicate well? Like if you feel like a priority shift, you want to make sure that the person, especially if they're coming from different people, which happens less in TMF and a little bit more in clinical operations, where you might have different people asking you for different things, versus like more of a one manager kind of a situation. But just say, like, I make sure I communicate to everybody so they know the priorities have shifted. I think you should definitely highlight the fact that you have your smart sheets experience. I feel like you kind of touched on it. But you can talk about how I've become like the smart sheets guru, and that I've really tried to take this on, not only to help the team, but to help myself prioritize it, because I am constantly trying to improve myself. I think that that you mentioned was really great. And then one aspect of that smart sheets has an advantage is you can say, I also have it provides visibility. So I could have my to-do list, but I can also share that with my manager. So, but you always want to highlight your skills in your answers. And we highlighted on your resume that you had that Smartsheets experience that not everyone has. So I feel like emphasize that a little bit more. But overall, great response. All right, and we're running close on time. I have a few more questions, but if Nick, Jesse, and Keith have any questions they want to add, feel free to jump in. My next question is, what are 3 words a colleague would use to describe you? And this is a pretty common question, so I would say have some solid answers.
I would say they would think that I'm very friendly because I am always having that open door policy, no matter what department you're in. With that liaison work, I have been able to create friendships with people outside of my department, which I think is very valuable. And I've even been able to collaborate with a team member through Smartsheets and even introduce that into my own records management department, which was a really good collaboration piece for both of us. Another thing I think that they would call, describe for me would be hardworking. I feel that, people see that I am pretty busy, but that I always try to do my best in everything that I do. So I don't just, when somebody asks me for something, I don't just give them 1-word answers or say, here, go find it out for yourself. I always make a point to tell everybody, if you need me to better explain it, by all means, I can explain it to you face to face. We can take time to sit down and talk about it together. And I really feel that satisfaction when I do help out somebody to the point where they can tell that same information to somebody else. So I've had that training experience as well with newcomers, and that's been really rewarding for me. Another thing that people would describe me as would probably be very organized. So I have really expanded my knowledge in Excel, which has led to Smartsheets, because Smartsheets enables the Excel portion as well as forms, and also Gantt charts. Having that all interconnected has really helped with organization, and specifically with completeness reviews. I have even created a template which shows off kind of the index of all the trackers that I create for one completeness review. So it's something that I feel is very helpful for my team when they work with me, because we all have the same questions, and just in general, like a place for them to all see the common questions that are asked to me as the one who oversees the completeness review, I think is super helpful for them. And it's also very colorful. And the fact that it's, somewhat, aesthetically pleasing. So I feel like people know me as a colorful organizer in a sense. So yeah.
Awesome. No, good job. I think organized is a really important one. Hardworking. I think maybe when you're doing the hardworking, one additional aspect you can add is like, I love this work. Like I'm like hardworking, and I because one reason is that like it's not just my personality, but I also like truly enjoy this work. That's something to like emphasize in general, especially like HR, who they're like, oh, cool, somebody likes TMF. And then friendly. I liked what you said, but maybe even like explain it a little bit in the sense of like people would call me friendly because I am positive, helpful, and approachable. And then you can go into a little bit more, just because friendly tends to be maybe like a less professional word, but I think it is a good description of you. I find you friendly, and I think if you kind of pull it to what you mean by that with a couple more like professional terms, but I definitely think you wouldn't want to waste your 3 things on saying positive, helpful, and approachable. It's nice that you can use 1 word to describe that. That's my opinion. And I would maybe start with hardworking, organized, and then do friendly last. Any thoughts, Nick, Jesse? Ken, you're always welcome to sauce on this too. Don't want to exclude you. But any thoughts on that one? I thought it was a pretty good answer.
Yeah, I definitely thought it was a good answer. Maybe just kind of emphasizing that people do like reaching out to you for help, and you're really good at that portion of communication and helping others when you talk about being friendly. So yeah.
Perfect.
Awesome. Any other comments? I saw Jesse unmuted. But if not, my next question, and this is something that I used to ask all the time, and I have a kind of a specific answer for it. But when you have a question, what are your methods to solving it?
So when I solve a question, I like to first go and seek out from the resources that I'm given exactly what has been provided to me. So I feel like when you research with the tools that you're given, it increases your knowledge and your confidence. The second thing I do, if I still have more information that I still feel like I need to understand, I will then go to a coworker and ask them for their input and see if they have any insight into the information that I'm missing. If they aren't able to, I would then, in our specific department, we have a questions tracker, and it also asks us to provide from the resources that are given to us what we have found so far, and then what our basic hypothesis is for how we would best answer the question. The manager then goes in and either verifies it, or they say, you know, this actually is more information that I'm here to provide you with, and it's actually a different answer. So for me, it's always starting off with me first, researching, looking what I have at the tools that I've been given, and then going out and expanding to other people. So
yeah, this was a favorite question that we would always ask at Pharma 66. And the main thing was that this coworker that I had who helped me interview with other people really hated when like they would train people and then the person would like just come running to them when they had questions. And they'd be like, bro, I gave you like a summary page, like you should look through this. And then maybe one thing to do, kind of what you talked about, like look at the resources. I think look at the resources you're given. The FAQ is great. Like, you know, I explained the FAQ. And then maybe add somewhere that like, if it's something in terms of like smart sheets or Excel or things like that, that you feel comfortable like Googling and looking at like external resources to like continue to improve yourself. That was what my friend Tammy was like one of her favorite, like she was like, I want people to like Google things. I'm like, not everything's Googleable, but she was trying to avoid people just like coming to her. And then I think what you talked about, I would say coworker, or it'd be like when appropriate, I would go to my coworker or manager, and then be like, and if I still have the question, I would always later clarify with my manager. I think we're about to run out of time, so just FYI, I might cut us off. But overall, I thought that was really great. I think you answered